It's Friday, April 16, 2021. This is episode number 177, Cash Balance Plan Part 10. Our plan 1 full year in. Time to credit our accounts. It's a 39.6 Facebook and YouTube live finance show, the show that teaches high earners like yourselves how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. We talk general investing, taxes, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, paying for college, paying for childcare, and even the car you drive. So we did a 9-part cash balance plan series maybe 6 months ago, and we're going to continue this now that we've actually gone a full 1 year cycle of our company's plan. So for those who remember, or those who have not listened to them before, brief summary. In 2019, we got our pension plan going, our cash balance pension going for my company, which is a large organization. And I had been trying for like 3 years to make this happen and got it pushed forward in 2019. It almost didn't happen, but eventually did. So we were very thankful for that. Basically got down to the wire in terms of finalizing everything. But we got our plan documents all done by December of 2019 for the 2019 year. We funded it in January 2020 for the 2019 year. You actually have until like March to fund the previous year. So last year, January 2020, before the world came to a grinding halt, we had formally gotten our plan in place and funded it. Now, let's just say for round numbers, we got $10 million into the plan. And that money was there for the 2019 year. Then for 2020, money started going in for the 2020 year during the course of the year. Now, we hadn't done any extra crediting for the 2019 money because that money didn't go in until basically after the year was already completed. So there was no year for that money to have grown. Okay. So we basically had the money in the account at Vanguard now for about 15 months. Okay. At the end of December, so I contact our actuary and I'm like, so can we credit our accounts now? Because the year is over. And it's like, not so fast. It doesn't quite work that way. We still have to do all the cross testing and everything. They have to do that each year to make sure we know how much we can actually credit our accounts. Okay, because if we credit our accounts too much, then we potentially don't pass the cross testing at the level we planned on, at the 5% level. It could bump us up and we may have to pay other people more money, or like all of our employees, potentially an additional like whole percent, from 5% match to a 6% match, which would cost us over $1 million. So we can't actually credit the accounts until we finished all the cross testing. And that's not something that's done until after the year is over. Okay. And they do that kind of retrospectively. They look back at the year, make sure we know how much money all of the employees earned and how much they got into their 401ks. And we fund the employer side of the 401k. We always do this in the subsequent year. So we usually do this like in May, June, July, or August after the year. So historically, for example, we would just be getting our 2020 401k contributions maybe now, usually in the summertime, because we have to do all that testing first to make sure that we don't pay ourselves too much as highly compensated employees and violate the non-discrimination rules. Okay, so the cash balance plan and the 401k go hand in hand together in that cross-testing, you do that all simultaneously between the 401k and the cash balance plan. It's all done together. So the benefit is now we have this third-party actuary for the cash balance pension, and they actually get our numbers done way earlier than we historically had. And so by March, we already had our numbers, and we were able to fund 401k contributions to the employer from the employer side to all of the shareholders. So for example, we get the full like $37,500 on top of the 19.5 that we put in ourselves as employees. But that is just the 401k part. And then we credit the cash balance pension. Okay, so then the question is, how much do we credit our pension with? Okay, so for example, let's just say for round numbers sake that my amount that I'm allowed to contribute per year is $100,000. So I would have put in $100,000 in 2019 at the end of the year, came out of my paycheck and went in January 2020. Then in the 2020 year, I had $100,000 come out of my paycheck spread over more months. Okay, so by this point, I have put in $200,000 into it. Now, our accounts, our hypothetical accounts of the cash balance plan for each participant, they get credited once per year. Okay, we don't do this like on a monthly basis. It's not like a 401k where every time money goes in, your balance changes. We do this on a once a year basis. So last year in April or so of 2020, everybody's account was credited with the amount they had put in or the amount that had come out of their pay in 2019 for that year. So for example, in April of last year, hypothetically, my account balance had $100,000. Okay. Now, I had another $100,000 come out last year, and then this year, they updated the hypothetical value of my account, my cash balance. Now, it's not going to say $200,000 because that would just be how much I had before and how much went in. It should say $200,000 plus some extra amount. Okay, so how much extra is that? Now, if you recall, our plan is set up like many newer cash balance pensions, that we have a dynamic market-based return model where the amount that is credited is based on what the performances of the underlying assets in a given year. It's not fixed at like 3% or 4% or 5%. So we are allowed to credit it with anywhere between 0% up to a cap of 5%. It can't go below 0 because in a pension, you can't lose money or lose value. And it had a cap on how high it would go, because if it went too high, it would have required us to decrease our contributions. And the real benefit of the cash balance plan is your tax deduction, not the returns you're getting on the money. It's the tax break. So you want to really maximize the tax break. So by cutting off the total amount that we can credit at a cap of 5%, it allows us to get in more. So getting in like $100,000 is a good amount, considering we're only giving our employees like 5% on their 401k. We're not cranked all the way up to 7.5% matched to them. So how much does our balance now show? Well, 100,000 went in the first year, 100,000 went in the second year. If you took 5% on top of both of those, okay, that would be an extra $10,000. So that'd be like $210,000. But that's not what it showed, okay? It showed $205,000. Okay, now why is that? Well, last year, the balance listed was $100,000. The amount that got credited to the account was 5% gain of the $100,000 that was in there as of last year. So that $100,000 with a 5% return is another $5,000. Okay, so that brings up to 105 plus the extra $100,000 that was put in as a contribution. Now, the way, at least it is for us, is that $100,000 is, is credited all at once now. So even though it was like withheld from our pay over the course of the year so that that money can get set aside, and even though it went into the investment account and was invested, it doesn't get credited to our account now until now. So it's not eligible to receive a 5% return on top of that because the money wasn't really there last year. It went in over the course of the year. So people are like, why is the return so low? Well, because it's not on the amount you put in total. It's the credit is based on the balance from last year when we initially posted the amount, which was based on the 2019 year from the year prior. So everything is kind of done in arrears. It's all done like a year delayed. And that's how the employer side of retirement accounts often works, just because you have to make sure that you're not over contributing, and you can't really know for sure until you've finished off the year and all of the employees' amounts have been finalized. Okay. Now, yes, we got the 5%. How did that get decided? I thought there was going to be some sort of a meeting. There wasn't really. This kind of happened. But when we had met with our advisor and our money had gone in January with a basic 40-60 allocation over the course of 12-month period from the end of January of 2020 to the end of January of 2021, we got a little over 10%. Which is great when your goal is to get 5% every year. Then you just want to basically get enough that you can keep that 5% and also not take any losses. You don't want a risk of taking a loss, especially the first year. And so fortunately, now we are in a surplus because it made 10%, but we only credited 5%. So there's an extra 5% hanging there. And so if in 2021, there is a 0% return on the investment pool, then we would still have extra capital to fund and potentially credit people with the full 5%. Because if we made 10% in year one and 0% in year two, that could be 5% and 5% across 2 different years, and we would be okay. Now, in reality, that won't happen because we added more people to the plan in the second year. So that extra surplus from the first year would not be enough to turn 0% up to 5%, but maybe it could go 0% to 3%. Or if we get a loss this year of, let's say, 3% loss, maybe there's enough surplus to keep us at 0. So we would credit our accounts with 0 so that it would still be the $205,000 that I have now plus another 100. So it'll be $305,000. So 0% return on my 205. So I wouldn't have any loss, and the fund could still be in a surplus state, adequately funded pension plan. So that's the logistics of how that ended up working for us. I don't know how it works for other cash balance plans, especially if you have a solo plan where it's just you. I don't know how that crediting actually works. Do you get to credit yourself for that first year? Like if you opened up a plan in 2020 in November, would you be able to credit your account for the 2020 year if it had gone up in value? I don't know. Maybe you could, but that's not how ours does it. It bases it on your balance from the previous year, add a percentage credit to that, and then add your contributions for the current year, and that's it. So if there was no money in there in the previous year, there's no interest gained for the prior year balance. And it makes it a lot cleaner, and it also helps keep it a little bit more in a state of surplus because that crediting happens so much later. Now, going back over the past year, the S&P 500, just over the past 12 months, Like last year around now was pretty low. I don't think it was quite the lowest, but I think actually the past 12 months alone, the S&P 500 got a return of over 50%. It was actually 56.35% year over year return right now. And that's just in valuation, not including dividends. So it could have been maybe 58% or so over the past 12 months. Now, that's just the nature of the past 12 months because it had gone down so much between February and April of last year. But looking at it from January to January, it was 10%, which is a pretty good year. If you close your eyes, you don't know what happened throughout the entire year. You're like, oh, 10%, that's solid. People who were able to put money in March and April are like, wow, that was an incredible year. But that's just volatility, right? Like if you get in at the bottom and it has a big rise, and you can make a lot more money during that period of time. And if you put money in right before it goes down, you can also lose a lot of money during that period of time. That's just the nature of having a volatile asset class like equities. But when you're diversified into other assets, especially when you have like 60% bonds, you're going to have a lot less drawdown and a lot less spikes. Okay, it'll be a lot more muted, which is what you're ultimately going for in a cash balance pension plan. And you can always balance your portfolio across other accounts to achieve the asset allocation of your desire within some reason. Like if you have millions of dollars in other assets, your cash balance plan is such a small percentage of your total portfolio that you can design it however you want to. If you don't have any other assets, then yeah, it'll be more difficult to get an asset allocation that you desire. So which could happen if you're just starting out. But if you're in a position where you can fund six figures into a cash balance pension every year, you're making a ton of money, you're at a high tax bracket, and saving on tax is going to be a lot more important than what your asset allocation is, whether it's 40-60 or 70-30. Saving that money is going to be far more important long-term. So I'll check real quick if we have any questions in the chat. Yeah, part 10. All right, yeah, spot on about avoiding losses, especially the first year. So that was actually the one thing I was most concerned about. I'm putting like, so our plan is really big. I don't want to say the numbers, but I mean, it's a huge plan. And a lot of people were skeptical about getting a plan going for a lot of reasons because they don't really understand them. Anytime something is new, people are a little scared of something. But if we had a loss in year one, and I'm sure in March, the balance was in the red. I think I was checking on it occasionally. I don't actually have access to the account balance myself, but it must have gone down in March, right? It had to have, but I don't think it actually went down that badly. I think it might have gone down maybe 15% to 20%, maybe closer just to 10%. And so just knowing that we were at 60% bonds was very reassuring. I mean, I went back historically to look at the drawdown risks of that asset allocation. And certainly in 1 year, you can take a negative, but over the course of a 3-year period, it was very unlikely to be below zero, especially being below zero more than like 5 or 10%, where it would potentially like kind of hurt. But I mean, when people are putting in like $100,000 per year, if over the course of 3 years, you're down like 5% on your money, they're probably way more down on their other investments than they are on this plan. So from that standpoint, it's so weird. Comparison is a thief of joy, right? If everybody lost a ton of money last year and we had a pension that only lost, let's say 10%, people would say, oh, well, now we have this liability to our company, we're in a shortage. Which is part of the reason why we only allow shareholders to partake in this, because ultimately we can claw that money back from the shareholders. So that it's not really putting a liability on the company, but technically there is a liability if we're in a loss. But the pension would probably look better if people like lost their shirts last year. Now, of course, a lot of people made a ton of money last year, some like insane amounts of money from a dollars perspective and from a percentage perspective. But year over year, 10% is a pretty solid return. If you could get 10% every year over the course of your life, you should be pretty happy with that. But because people made a lot more than 10% in the course of a year, the cash balance pension looks really wimpy. So, but it's in a surplus and it's an asset to the company, and it saved participants millions of dollars in federal tax, or at least deferred that. It saved probably $1 million in Medicare across the employer and the employee side. That's permanent tax savings. And having our actuary redo the cross testing, because we brought in our third-party actuary, it actually saved us 7 figures in employer 401k contributions to our other employees. Last year, year before that, and this year again. So, I mean, it's saved our company just millions of dollars, and it's saved the participants millions of dollars. So, I mean, it's really just a no-brainer. But like most cash balance plans, we still don't have a majority of people participating, but I think we're closer to 50% now, which is pretty good since we're just in our second year, and especially because we hadn't actually ever completed a year for people to really know how this was going to work. But now that we're there, I'm trying to hopefully be able to grow the plan bigger. But yeah, not being in a loss last year is huge. I would have felt that liability risk because ultimately I decided that asset allocation for hundreds of people and many millions of dollars, much more than I have to my own name. So yeah, that's it. That's our first year. And I'm glad to hear about a lot more people getting these plans open. I'd like to hear about people's plans and how they've had them set up, how they've credited them, how much they were able to put in as an employee in a larger group, or as a 1099 person. I just like to see case studies. I think it'd be really helpful. I think a lot of people kind of look for that. Like they just want to know, how much can I put in if blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I know my situation with my company, but I would love to hear other people. So please feel free to send me a message or post it on the board. That would be super awesome. Not a lot of information out there on this, and I appreciate it. Okay, that's it for today's episode. Yeah, welcome to the world of being a fiduciary. Yeah, I mean, when it's my own money, you know, I do whatever I want to do with my own money. But when it's a lot of other people's money, that is, I have a lot more stress about other people's money than I have about my own. Because my own, I can just replace it. Other people, well, we don't know what situations they're in. So that's it for episode number 177. Hopefully I can hit episode 178 tomorrow and get a couple more episodes in this coming up week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Good night.